Hello all, I'm Sai and in today's video, I'm bringing to you my May reading wrap-up. May was an amazing reading month for me. I managed reading a total of 12 books and all 12 of them are physical books. So I've taken a good chunk out of a physical TBR. If you watched my latest book haul, you know that I've bought quite a few books in the past 5 months itself. So in order to keep up with my TBR, I have to read through my physical books as soon as I can. And basically the whole month itself was very amazing for me because I did not stick with any book that was not good. I think I rated 1 or 2 books alone 3 stars, but even they were engaging for me to read. Of these 12 books, 3 books are alone from one series and I reread them because I want to read the latest book in the series. So I did the audiobooks of them in Tamil in the Storytel app. I will be talking about them in English here because I read the books first in English. They are available in both the languages. So yeah, without any further ado, let's get into the books right away. I started off the month with a totally unexpected book and it was so much fun for me to read. I took this book up and started reading it because I was decluttering my bookshelves in the end of April and this book out of nowhere was just stuck in between. So I took it out and I wanted to give it a read because May is like peak summer here in Chennai and I wanted to read some book which has a summer vacation kind of vibe. So I went for this, which is The Time of Our Lives by Jane Costello. In this book, we follow our main character, Imogen, who's in her late 20s or early 30s and she's a single mom. She's also handling this very huge position in the company that she's working in. And it feels like she's also kind of a pushover when it comes to her work. Under all these circumstances, she loses her daughter with her mother to be taken care of by her for a few days and puts all her responsibilities on hold at work despite being continuously rummaged by them while she is in the vacation and goes with 2 of her best friends on a vacation to Barcelona and so many things happen there. Now, there are certain contemporary books in which everything that can go wrong happens and with that the comedy just develops right. This book is like that and at some instances it just felt like the author was overdoing it just because she wanted to make it seem funny. Except that I cannot say that there is anything standing out about this book, but if you want to read something which is nice, cozy and low-key, especially for a summer vacation, you can go forward and give this a try. I don't think I'll be remembering this book that much, but it was a good book in the right time for me, so I rated it 4 out of 5 stars. Next we have a great literary fiction book that is written by an Indian author and it also happens in India. This author has easily become one of my favorite authors in the past 5 to 6 months because each and every book that I've read by her has been a favorite for me. And this also did not end up being an exception because it was just perfect, okay? These are the kind of stories that I read books for and the book is The Rule Breakers by Preeti Shenoy. In this book, we follow Veda, who's in the final year of her college, and this also happens in the early 90s in a very rural kind of place. So what happens to Veda is while she is in the final year of her college, she gets married to this man named Bhuvan and she is to move from her home village into Pune. And she's going to live with her husband in Pune there. Both of them have their own issues and what are all going to happen in both of their lives together as well as separately is the plot of this book. If you're someone who just loves day-to-day stories that we see in our own household and also in the houses around us, you need to try this book because it was just awesome, okay? I don't know how Preeti Shenoy handles each and every subject that she takes up in her books so well, okay? She just nailed everything in this book perfectly if you ask me. It is both a sad and happy book at the same time and at the end it just gives you a bittersweet taste which just feels super realistic. Her characters are amazing, her writing is super easy to read at the same time sophisticated. I just have one more book by this author which I have not read on my shelf and I'm planning to pick it up really soon and I want to read each and everything that is a backlist by this author because hardly I find authors whose writing matches 100% with my taste and aesthetics and this author just matches in every level possible. And I also hope I get to meet her at least once in my life because I just love her writing so much. If you couldn't predict, this was obviously a 5-star read for me. Next, let us talk about the series whose first 3 books I went forward and read it in order to read the 4th book from the series, which is kind of the latest release inside it. I'm talking about none other than the Ramchandra series by Amish. I read all these 3 books way back in 2020, so it's been 4 years since I read them. And I can say that my taste and opinion of the series has not changed as much compared to how it was back then in 2020. And another thing which I want to add is I read the translated Tamil versions of these as audiobooks in the Storytel app. The series has been translated from English into Tamil by Pavitra Srinivasan, who has done a lot of translations across both the languages and her translations are really beautiful. Now let's talk about these books first. So first I went forward and read Ram. My feelings about this book did not change on my reread because in the first read itself I thought that Lord Ram was shown as a very flat character by the author here. We all know that his main characteristic is maintaining justice and always sticking with the rules while doing the right things. I think the author has stumbled a lot while trying to maintain that composure of the character here, because the whole book itself just felt so bland to me, except for a huge thing which happens in the exact middle of the book. I'm sure anyone who has read the series knows what happens in this book, and I should say that the way in which the author makes the main character handle that issue, even though it's fiction inside the story, was not executed well. Okay, he could have chosen something else and shown us the dilemma between justice and what needs to be done that is faced by the main character in this book, and I don't think it was done well here. So still, I can say that it is not my least favorite of the books inside the series, but my opinions of it have not changed so far. I rated this one 4 stars. Next, we have the best book in the series by far. If I'm not wrong, even the 4th book has not lived up to the quality of this one from all the things that I've seen so far, and it is Sita. I was actually holding the wrong book, sorry. So, Sita, Warrior of Mithila, if you ask me, is the best that Amish Tripathi has written so far. Okay, I've read 6 to 7 of his books right now. No, 8 of his books right now. These 3 and the Shiva trilogy, I've read the Suhen Dev book and one non-fiction by him. Of all of those, this is the best if you ask me. Okay, the way in which he shows her as the Vishnu in this book is just amazing. Okay, the main plot of the series actually revolves between who's the avatar of Vishnu inside the Ramayana series for this whole plot. Okay, it's basically the reimagining of the Ramayana. So there are 2 people who think one of these 2 is the Vishnu. One person thinks that Sita is the Vishnu and the other thinks that Rama is the Vishnu. And if you ask me, by far from the progression of the series, even until the 3rd book, I can easily say that Sita is the Vishnu of the series. Okay, at least in this series, Sita is the avatar of Vishnu. And the way in which the author has written her is out of the world. Okay, I don't have any complaints about Sita as a character being written and all the things that she does too, because they are like nailingly perfect. And I'm so glad that I went forward and reread this book, and the experience of rereading it in Tamil was on another level. And finally, talking about the 3rd book, Ravan. After this reread, I should say that Ravan has become my least favorite book inside the series, because Ram, as I said before, is flat and Sita is somewhere else inside the series. Okay, it's like the best he has written so far, and this one felt really good when I read it back in 2020, but now I don't have that fond feelings about this book, because after reading Asura by Anand Neelakantan and seeing Ravana portrayed in one way there, and after that seeing him here like putting it to the stencil of an evil character as a villain, it did not feel right to me, because I saw so many good qualities of Ravana while I read Asura, and after that jumping into this book and seeing like him in a totally different point of view as a very bad person basically did not feel right for me. I'm not saying that everything that he does here is bad, and Amish totally shows him as the villain. He also shows his good sides to us, but after seeing how human this villain for the story is in that book, this did not live up in any way for me. So I ended up rating this one 3 stars, and I'm planning to read War of Lanka in June. Let's just cross our fingers and hope that I finish reading it in June itself, because it has been sitting on my shelf for over a year now, and it's high time I get to it. The next one is the book club pick for me in my channel, and it also ended up being the best book club pick so far this year. Okay, and it's a literary fiction book, which is Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. Now, I did one mistake alone while reading this book. Okay, if you ask me the right time, the perfect time to read this book is during the monsoon season here in our country, because the entirety of this book happens in a marshland, and I read this for like 2 to 3 days when it was actually raining in Chennai. Okay, it was little bit raining even in the middle of summer in Chennai, and I by some chance picked up this book to be read during those 2 to 3 days, and it matched perfectly with the weather for me. And if I had read this during the monsoon, trust me, I would be living inside this book. Okay, I will not be out here at all. So in this book, we follow our main character Kia, who's from a very dysfunctional family, and her parents are both abandoning her and her siblings because of a multitude of reasons. And Kia spends the entirety of her life all alone in this small house in a marshland in America. Some people from the community come together and bring help to her and make her survive through all these years. And once she turns into an adult, she falls in love with this man. She had also been in love with another man when she was a teen, and one of these 2 people ends up being dead in the current life of Kia when she is an adult. She is the prime suspect of his killing, and why she is thought to be so, and what are all the understandings of Kia by these people who are living in this marshland is the plot of this book. It is really, really perfect, and it is also the debut fiction book by the author, which I could not believe. The writing was so beautiful and strong that it made me feel the place where the story was happening very vividly. I've not watched the movie adaptation for this one, but I really want to after finishing this book, because it was just out of the world, and I'm so glad that I picked it up as a book club pick. It has also been sitting on my shelf for a year now, and I'm so glad that I ended up reading it for my book club, and it was just amazing, and another 5-star read for me. Next, we have a YA contemporary romance book, and it is Fake Dates and Mooncakes by Sher Lee. In this book, we follow our 2 main characters, Dylan and Theo, of whom Dylan is working in the small Chinese restaurant that his aunt owns, and his mother died, because of which she's living with his aunt and her family, and they are a very cozy little beautiful family if you ask me. And Theo is this very rich guy, and because of some things that happen, both of their lives cross together, and Theo asks Dylan to be his fake date for a wedding in his family. They go to the wedding together and spend a couple of days together, faking out being in a relationship there. And so a beautiful friendship as well as relationship blooms between them, which is basically the plot of this book. Now, if you ask me, the main reason why you need to read this book is because of its aesthetics, okay? And it's also super cozy to read. You can read this during any time of the year. I actually planned to read this back in February because it's a romance book, but because of some reasons I was not able to pick it up right back then itself, so I finally went forward and did it in May. I think it just took me like 1 or 1.5 days to finish this one because it's quite a short book. It was also on my 5-star predictions TBR, but it ended up just being a 4-star read for me because as a whole the story was really nice and cozy, and it delivered everything that I expected. But in the last third of the book, what happens is the author just makes things way too dramatic, and that just brought the story down a notch for me. Other than that, I don't have any complaints about this book, and June is also Pride Month, right? So just go forward and try reading this book. I'm sure you'll not be disappointed, and it also feels super cozy. The next one is the first book inside an epic fantasy YA series, and from the amount I'm laughing and smiling now itself, you know that it's one series which I'm enjoying totally, okay? And it is also from an author whose other series which I finished in the first quarter of the year, okay? This is a super popular series, and I see why after having read like 2 books from the series in this month itself, and it is Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. Okay, I finally reread this book and went forward and finished the second book inside the series. And I specifically wore this hoodie just in order to match with the cover of this book, grey and grey. I'm pretty sure you know what Throne of Glass is, right? It's about this super cool assassin named Selena Sarlothian, and she's imprisoned in this huge, kind of a slave camp called Endovia, and she's released from that camp and is to compete with 24 or 23 other people in order to become the guard for the king. If she wins the contest and becomes the champion of the king, she will be cleared of all her crimes after serving 5 years as a guard for the king, and she has to do a lot of things also after she becomes the guard. Whether she wins or not, this competition is the plot of this book, and it's just the surface, okay? Trust me, I've read the second book and I know how huge this series is going to explode. I'm super in for it, and I wanted to read the novella collection also in May itself because I was just not getting enough of the story. But we have only 30 days a month, right? But I'm sure I'm going to continue on with the series and I'm going to binge through it as soon as I can. Now, this first book was not great, okay? It's a good start. It's a nice book, but it's not anything out of the world. So don't expect much from this one, but you can expect a lot from the second book. I'll talk about it shortly. This was a great start for the series, and I thoroughly enjoyed rereading it, and it ended up being a 4-star read for me. Next, we have a historical fiction romance book, and it is also a queer romance story, which is Learned by Heart by Emma Donoghue. Here we'll see the love story between Anne Lister and Eliza, and the story is entirely narrated from the point of view of Eliza. In this book, we basically follow both of their lives together in this kind of convent for women and how they are disciplined and domesticated there. It was a nice story. It felt very different from anything that I've read so far, but basically the thing which lacked totally in this book for me is plot, okay? I was able to understand how both these characters are, who are they as people, and what they would do under different circumstances. But apart from that, there was no story at all, okay? There is no story inside this book. If you're a plot-driven person, I'd suggest you to not pick this book up because, as I've been saying, it does not have a story. It just talks about the daily happenings inside this convent between our 2 main characters as well as all the other young women there. Another reason why I picked this book up is because one of the 2 main characters whom we see here is half Indian, and how the Indianness of her is whitewashed is also a huge part of the story. So if you're interested in any such thing like that, you can go forward and try this one. But personally, for me, it was not like anything out of the world at all. Again, another really nice character explored book that you can read for Pride Month, but it ended up doing not much for me, so I rated it 3 stars. Next, we have a sci-fi book which is not that high, okay? It is pretty low-key, and it is also a story which feels more contemporary than sci-fi if you ask me, and it is In the Lives of Puppets by T.J. Klune. The only reason why I wanted to read this book is the author, okay? I read The House in the Cerulean Sea in 2021 or 2022, and I did like that book. After that, I did not read anything else by the author, so I went forward and tried this one because, it is not part of a series, it's just a standalone. And in this book, we basically follow a very futuristic version of our world where robots have totally taken over humanity. And at the beginning of the story, we see one robot being handed over its child by his parents to the robot. And that child's name is Victor. Not even a child, actually a baby. And the robot ends up bringing up this boy who's a human being. So basically, Victor is the only human being inside this world, and he's just living his life with the machines. After he comes of age and he's like a new adult, there are certain revelations that come in his life, and he starts exploring things, and from then on, many other things happen. The main character here is also asexual, so there's a really good representation of that also done by the author here. But again, if you ask me, it has a plot, it has some inspirations going on, but I don't see the point of writing the story, okay? It did not feel interesting that much to me. It was definitely cozy. The way in which the characters were shown, both the robots as well as the human being, felt really realistic and natural. But as a whole, it did not feel like a story which, had anything in its core, if you ask me. Still, the writing was really good and it did keep me engaged from the beginning to the end, and it also flowed pretty fast. So I ended up rating it 3.5 out of 5 stars. Next, we have the second book inside the Throne of Glass series, which is Crown of Midnight by Sarah J. Maas again, okay? And the amount of time it took me to read this book is hardly 2 days because I was not able to put it down at all. Okay, I was reading this during the sweltering sun while I was on my commute to and from work, and trust me, I don't regret a moment reading this book because it was totally worth all the effort that I put into reading it because it is just perfect, okay? I can't wait to see how the story is going to progress on. I want to read the collection of novellas before I move on with the third book inside the series, but I'm going to do it pretty soon, okay? Probably I'll start reading that book after I finish filming this video. And another thing which I want to add is I did the light that had to match with the cover of this book, okay? Just like I did with the hoodie and the first book. Now in Crown of Midnight, we see a lot more revelations happening. We travel to a lot more places. There are new characters introduced here. The magic just blooms more and more, and you fall in love with the main character even more. And I've heard that after you read the collection of novellas, you understand Selena a lot better. Here itself, I understand her and love her so much. She's not a good person, okay? She's very, very grey. She has her own format of justice. She's an assassin, but she's kind. She also likes really girly stuff. At the same time, she can just kick anyone's ass literally and kill them, which is all shown perfectly here, okay? It doesn't make sense how she makes that good. And there's also super great representation of mental health throughout these first 2 books. I really literally cannot wait to continue on with the series and just eat it all up. I specifically started reading Throne of Glass now because multiple people have told me that I should not read Crescent City before I finish reading both ACOTAR as well as Throne of Glass. That's why I ended up buying the entire series itself. I'm so glad that I did because if the second book is this good, I can't even imagine how the rest of the series is going to be. I love all the 3 main characters whom we've followed here so far. And I'm standing Selena. Let's wait and see what she's going to do for the rest of the series. But a really, really great book. And I can't believe a second book can be this good. It easily ended up being a 5-star read for me. And finally, the last book which I ended up finishing in May is Thanks for the Memories by Cecelia Ahern, which is an adult contemporary romance, okay? I'm saying adult not because it's spicy or anything. It's just because both the main characters here are literally adults, okay? They are in their early 30s. Here we follow the story between Joyce and Justin, of whom Joyce is recently divorced and she's separated from her husband and living alone. And just before this happens, she also ends up miscarrying her baby because of a freak accident that she's out of nowhere met with. During the same time, what also happens is Justin, who's a person that is totally afraid of needles, ends up donating blood for the first time in his life. By chance, Justin's blood ends up reaching Joyce for her treatment, and because of this blood transmission, both of them start experiencing the experiences from the other person's life gradually in their own life. And they also end up meeting each other coincidentally more than just 2 or 3 times within a span of 2 to 3 months itself. And they also have a huge impact on their lives, at least in the level of the mind. How both of them are trying to find the other person and how a love story can build even with the 2 characters staying totally apart is the plot of this book. At times it gets a bit repetitive and it also feels a bit irritating because of the very unique thing that the authors tried to explore here. It also feels like magical realism if you ask me. But as a whole, this was a treat of a book to read, and if you like really good love stories, romance stories or contemporary stories in general, you should definitely go forward and give this a try. It also has that really good flavor like P.S. I Love You does. It is obviously not as good as that book, but for such a new concept, it is executed really well here, and I ended up rating this one also 4 stars. So yes guys, those are all the 12 books which I managed finishing in May, and it was one hell of a reading month for me, okay? And I cannot wait to see what all great books are awaiting to be read by me in June. It is also Pride month, so I might be reading a bit more peer books in June and try to, focus on that part of my TBR more. But I have zero plans, okay? I'm just going to go in there and see whatever I feel like reading, I'm going to pick it up and read because I did the same in May and it has worked out great for me. Don't forget to let me know your May wrap up in the comments below because I'd like to know what you read. And if you have any specific recommendations for me, please do let me know that too. And if you really enjoy watching today's video and found it useful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and also share it to your friends. And if you want to get more content from me, do subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching and have a great rest of your day.